Hey, what's going on? Welcome to your daily dose of mind stuff. My name is Ed Reiner, and thanks for joining me. I want to welcome you to this session, this episode. We're on day 63 of 100. If you haven't been to this daily dose of mind stuff before, I've been going live for 63 days out of 100. And it's basically all of the stuff that I'm studying on a daily basis to keep learning more about myself as I go through this journey and help you in the process. So today we are on session 13 of the Born Rich program, Bob Proctor's You Were Born Rich, which is Expect Abundance. We're going to be talking about expectation. John Canary, I believe, is the one that gives this lesson. And he's going to talk about expectation. What you expect is what you get. That is a key. And we have to expect the good that we want. We want to expect that things are going to work out. Example, when you get in your car, unless it's a really bad car, but you expect when you turn the key, or if you have a newer car, you push the button, you expect that the car is going to start. You just expect it, unless you have, like I said, an older car that has work on it. But for the most part, we expect it. And actually, you should expect that too, because we get what we expect. When we flick the light switch on, we don't wonder if the lights are going to come on. We expect that it's just going to turn on. And the same holds true with what we want and our goals that we're going after. We need to expect that they're going to come to us and not worry about it. Think, is it coming? We've planted the seeds in the subconscious mind, and we just need to expect that it's going to happen right on time. So let's go over to John, and he will fill us in and educate us on the rest of this lesson. It's a longer one, but it is critical that we get this idea.
About 6 years ago, I was down in a place called South Jersey, around Cherry Hill, Trenton, Atlantic City. And there was two speakers on a program just before me. And I've never been able to understand why I'm always the last one on a program, no matter where we're speaking. As a matter of fact, same thing happens to Robert. But something interesting happened on this program. There were two people on it who were stone blind. The first speaker was Tom Sullivan, that just in the odd TV show, Good Morning America, programs of that nature. And both of them gave the same title to their talk that day. And the title went like this: If only you people could see what we hear. Now that day, I learned something about that we don't see with our eyes, but we do see with our mind. In other words, and I'm going to work with both boards here in a little while, but I learned that day that the individual who has a desire can achieve that desire when they understand the relationship of being able to see it with their mind. Now, when Charlie Bosley got up that day, I could not believe what I heard when he was introduced as one of the top 10% of all life insurance agents on this earth, but yet the man was stone blind. Now, Charlie Bosley said he has always had a desire to achieve something. But he said he never, ever left the house because he was feeling sorry for himself as a result of something that happened to him in Vietnam. Then he said one day he was down in Atlanta watching a great golf tournament with the great Ben Hogan. And Ben Hogan would get up and tee off, and they tell Charlie, Ben's getting up to tee off, and he'd yell, come on, Ben, you can do it, you can do it. They'd come over and say, Mr. Bosley, you can't talk like that. At a golf tournament, you have to pretend you're at a funeral. But he said, I went through it for 18 holes because Ben Hogan is my hero. And he said, no one's going to throw a blind man off the golf course. Now, he said, when it was all over, Ben Hogan came up to him and he said, Mr. Bosley, I want to thank you for being such an inspiration to me today. And Bosley said, no, it's I who should be thanking you, Mr. Hogan. He said, you see, when I heard your story, I was a man living in pity. He said, I heard about your car accident and how before the head-on collision, you fell in front of your wife to protect her. And then when they got you to the hospital, they said to your wife, Mrs. Hogan, Ben will not live the night. And your wife said, you obviously don't know my husband. Now, he said, the next morning when you proved the experts wrong and you were able to continue with your life, they said, but Mrs. Hogan, Ben is never going to walk again. And she said, you obviously don't know my husband. Now, as months went by, you see, Ben, he started to get his spirit back again. He started becoming consciously aware, I'm in a bed, my body is broken, but I want to play golf again. And they said, Mrs. Hogan, he wants his golf clubs now strung up on the ceiling where he can see them all day long, but he's never going to play golf again. And Mrs. Hogan said, now he said, Mr. Hogan, you have won more golf tournaments and championships since your accident than before. And he said, that's the reason that I started to experience a different relationship with all the things that I have ever desired. And Hogan said, is there anything I can do for you, Mr. Bosley? He said, as a matter of fact, there is. He said, I'm pretty good golf. Do you know that he can beat many people on a golf course any day of the week, even though he's blind? He said, what can I do for you, Mr. Bosley? He said, I want to play one round of golf with the great Ben Hogan. Anytime you want. He said, there's one condition, Mr. Hogan. I want to play for $1,000 a hole. Now, I want you to keep in mind here, before I finish this story, Bob mentioned how some people put what is called a crown on circumstance. In other words, there are some people that actually get down and they deify this word circumstance. That's what's in control of their life. But yet here was a man whose sensory factor called sight, it was absent, he was blind. And Ben said, there is no way that I'm going to play you for $1,000 a hole. What will people think of me? He said, now just a minute, Mr. Hogan, you asked me for a request, I gave it to you, now you're backing out. Well, he got the best of Ben, and Ben said, I'll tell you what, I've got some people here, they're witness to the fact that I warned you, I'll play you, but I am going to play my best. Charlie said, that's fine. I wouldn't expect you to do anything else, Ben. Ben said, okay, when do you want to play? And Charlie said, 10 o'clock tonight. Now, I want you to think about what happened. You see, I want you for just a moment to think about all the things that you actually desire. Think about all the things that you desire. But now let me ask you something. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'll bet 10 being high that your desire for certain things in life, I would bet that they are at a 10. See, I've heard people say, people lack desire. Nobody lacks desire. You see, if you take and define this word desire for just a moment, just define this word desire. It is the effort of an unexpressed possibility within us that is seeking expression through us. The word desire, it comes from the Latin word dea, D-A, dash, S-I-R-E, which means to give birth to. Everybody in here has something rattling around within them that they want to give birth to. Desire is the language of spirit. But it seems the basic difference in people who experience their desire versus people who do not experience their desire, it has something to do with this great principle, the greatest principle an individual can ever learn, which is called expectation. Expectation. Now, if you had to take and write down something that surrounds this central purpose, just for a moment, if I said to everyone in this room, now Bob asked you to write out on a page what you want to become. Now I'm going to suggest to you that everybody in this room, from the top to the back and in the middle, that every one of us have a desire to be more, to do more, and to have more. But how many people actually expect it to happen? You know, there's a great point in history where Moses was leading all these people around a desert. And you know, a lot of people said he was lost. Moses was not lost. He was a man of wisdom. And what he was doing is leading these people around and around in circles until he was able to change the attitude or the consciousness before he went in to this new land. And all the people, they came to him and they said, Moses, we've got a problem. We have no water. What are you going to do? He said, you go and pray to your God for rain. And away they went and back they came. And they come back and they said, Moses, God has forsaken us. He said, what do you mean? He said, we have no rain. Moses said, tell me, where are the ditches? He said, the what? He said, the ditches. If you believed it was going to rain, you would have dug the ditches. You see, you can go around and desire all the things you want to be, all the things you want to do, and all the things you want to have, but until you're able to see yourself on the screen of your mind, you will never, ever experience the desire. Until you're able to see it and then proceed by acting on it, you will never experience the desire. Now, I want to move over to the other board and cover a little idea that is very dear to my heart just before I touch on the book. Now, think about this. Everybody in here at one time started out even in search of a better condition, improved quality, you could say, in our life. But for some reason or other, somewhere in the neighborhood of 20% of the people actually experience the objective, the goal, the purpose that they started out with. What happens to 80% of the people who start off with this great desire, this great love to achieve something, to become more, to have more, and to do more, to express more and more of themselves? In that marvelous book I just talked about a moment ago, Genevieve B. Rand said this. She said that the purpose of spirit, the very purpose of spirit, is expression. That it is seeking to become more and more over and above what it has already become. What a great thing to understand. It is seeking to become, but it cannot unless we permit it and provide this channel of expression. Unless we give it the channel, there is no expression. So how many people expect what it is they desire? Bob's going to get into this a little more later, but Raymond Hollowell said in his book, we should never desire something we don't expect, and we should never expect something we don't desire. This is the year now, the season, right now, where you see that commercial come on television. And you see a guy standing under a lamppost there, and he's sniffing, and it's raining, and it's cold, and it's dark, and he's getting a cold. And home he goes, and the scene switches, and there he is resting easily in bed because his wife just gave him NyQuil. Now, if you were to go down to any drugstore today and check the shelves for the cold remedies, there won't be too many. But as soon as the commercial hits the market, go down and they'll have an entire aisle dedicated just to the colds, or you could say that is consistent with the commercial. Because the season now has set up this mental ruling state, which is called expectation. This is the season we expect to catch a cold. I've had people in the programs, I go up to them and I say something like this. Do you get a couple of colds a year? Yeah. How many have you had this year? One. Have you got one more to come? Yeah, I usually get it about November. Now that is the mental ruling state. Your expectation is a magnet, and it will attract everything of a like nature. Let me give you an example. Brian, would you stand up with Leslie for a moment? Just go ahead and stand up, Brian. But when you met Leslie, did you just say, that's the girl I would like to spend some time with?
That's...
Brian, just tell me.
No question about it.
Leslie, when you looked at Brian, did you say, now there's a guy I want to spend my time with?
Yeah.
Now, I want you to understand something here. The two of them met long before they laid eyes on one another. Now, I know that's going to pop the navel of most people in here. But what you're looking at is the law of expectation. Now, whether Brian was aware of it or not, he was attracting Leslie into his life. Leslie was attracting Brian into his life. Bob said resonance or love is the resonance of thought. What you're looking at is love. And what you're looking at is one idea vibrating in two bodies. Vibrating in two bodies. Brian made me promise I'd get him on the program. Okay, Brian, you can sit down. Okay? Now think about it. Where did you get off in search of or in pursuit of what is called your goal? I want you to imagine going down to Maple Leaf Gardens and suddenly the game starts, you drop the puck, you look at each end of the rink and there's no nets. Now the game would be a little confusing. You need nets to play that game. Well, I shouldn't say that with the Leafs, it doesn't matter. But now think about it. I mean, if there were no nets at each end of the rink, the game, there would be a lot of activity, but there would be no purpose in playing the game. How can you play the game of life? How can you get up in the morning, put both feet in the floor, and you've got nothing to work toward? See, you have a desire, but what you do is you don't see yourself in possession of the desire. Consequently, you don't release this power that flows with and through you. But isn't it interesting that we all started out in pursuit of the objective, but something happens at a particular point. We run into a crisis. We run into conflict. And it seems that we run into what is called demands. What are some of the demands we all run into when we start to try and improve the quality of our life? Be a little better as a salesperson. Be a little better as a person, as a mother, as a father. Someone once asked me, give me one good reason, Canary, why I should have a goal and maybe try to be a little bit better than I am. I'm going to give you one. There are little eyes upon you when they're watching night and day. There are little ears that quickly they take in everything you say. There are little hands all eager to do everything you do, and a little boy or girl who's dreaming of the day they'll be just like you. For you're this little person's idol, you're the wisest of the wise, and their little mind about you no suspicions ever rise. For they believe in you devoutly, and in all we say and all we do, those little people who are dreaming of the day they'll be just like you and just like me. What are we like? For we are setting an example every day in all that we do to those little gaffers who are dreaming of the day they'll be just like you. Just like you. And just like me. Well, you see, when you're faced with a demand, don't have enough money, debt, people phoning us. And I'd suggest that anyone who is in debt, I strongly urge you to read that chapter on Born Rich. It'll show you how to handle it. It'll show you how to handle it. Now think about this. Why is it when some people are faced with demands that turn into what are called risks, that some take what is called an option? Do you know the mind is such a marvelous, marvelous piece of equipment? Although the mind is an activity, it is not a thing. It is not a thing. I want you to think about this for just a moment. When the mind is presented with a demand or a risk, the mind will offer you and me an option. Do you know the option it offers us when we're faced with a strong demand and a risk is called the escape hatch? We then start expecting the result that we don't want. We are a force of energy, and we attract everything of a like nature. Bob mentioned that this mental state of vibration, which generates this emotional state of vibration, which moves this body into action, those three states of vibration are nothing more but your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. Think of this word, attitude. Attitude is nothing more but our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. That's your state of vibration. That's the energy that you send out into life. And the only thing that flows in your life is based on what flows out of your life. Your thoughts, feelings, and actions release this energy and will attract everything that corresponds to that ruling state. Expectation can be either a blessing or a curse, but either way, it is certainly one of the most powerful unseen forces in your life. What do you expect? I'll tell you how to know what you expect. Take a look at the results in your life. Your results will tell you exactly what you've been expecting. What you've been expecting. Now, worry is the opposite of expectation, using the same energy, but worry sets up a magnetic force that attracts things of a like nature or events and people to cause that worried state to actually manifest in one's life. Just quickly, this is a letter from a young boy named David Holly in Hamilton, Ontario. And the letter he writes is about coming to a program that we were doing out in Hamilton. And he gives me all kinds of pleasantries here, dear John, this, that, and the other thing, and all the great things that happened to him. He said, when I was at your seminar, I wanted to stand up and say, I was a goal setter. I am a goal setter. But he said, I couldn't do that. He said, I allowed the demands and the risks to control what I was going to do. I allowed the demands and risks to keep me in my seat. But he said, you spent some time with me. We sat down, we talked about it. And he said, you gave me a little better understanding of what I want versus what I expect. There's the result. I want you to take a real close look at this report card, because what's on it, if you go all the way down the page, you will see straight A's. Straight A's. Can you see it, John? He became a goal setter first. Second, he expected the goal to appear in his life. Now, I want to introduce you to Mark Dwyer. Mark, I was standing out in the hallway, and Mark came all the way down the back stairs, and Mark come up and I said, can I help you with something? He said, I just wanted to come down and meet you. You see. So I want to I had a little talk with him, and I want you to give a warm welcome to Mark Dwyer. Come on up here, Mark. Come over here, Mark. Mark, stand right there. Now you see, Mark has the same goal that David Holly has. Isn't it interesting he happened to appear and talk about something I was going to share with you? Now, Mark, which mark is your lowest mark? In what subject?
A D.
A D? In which subject, Mark?
I think it's in science.
Mark, do you like science as much as you like English?
No.
You see, Mark is never going to do as well in science as he's doing in English. Do you know why? He's not really excited about it. How could he possibly expect to do well in it? Now, Mark, I want you to just stand sideways with me here, and I want you to take a look at the board, like just kind of face me. Just turn around and face me. Go ahead like I'm standing. Okay, do that. Now, Mark. have you been talking to Bob before you come up here? I'm going to get Brian down here to do a little number. Okay, Mark. Mark, you see, here's a person that's not getting any marks in school. They have a desire. And they start out, Mark, with all the marks that they want in school. They want to be good kids. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They want to do well in school. But you know, there's demands and there are risks. You know what the demands and risks are, Mark? The demands and the risks are coming from their peers. You know, Mark, there are people in school that are going to stop you from doing well if you let them.
Yes.
Isn't that right, Mark?
Yes.
Mark, are you going to let them?
No.
Mark, you see, you have a desire, right? Now, Mark, you can see yourself not accomplishing that desire because there's a lot of demands and a lot of things that tell you can't do it. There's a lot of people who are going to say you can't be a member of our club if you want to get good marks. And then what you do is you take the escape hatch. Mark, I want you to remember one thing for me, will you? That no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. Will you remember that?
Yes.
No one.
No.
Now, Mark, I want you to back up just a little bit, take a couple steps back, okay? Okay, and stand like I stand, okay? Now, Mark, you do have a desire. Mark has an average of B's in school now. Is that correct, Mark?
Yep.
Mark, what mark do you want, Mark?
A.
Mark wants A's in school. Mark, can you see yourself with a report card with A's on it?
Yes.
Now, Mark, when you go home, I want you to sit down with your mom. Your mom is here, isn't that right?
Yes.
And I want you and your mom to get a blank report card at school. When is the next report card, Mark? Mark, when do you get the next one?
I don't know.
Do you get it in the next couple of months, December, something like that?
Yeah.
I want you to get a blank report card when you go home. And you take it home, you and mom, and you sit down, and what you do is you fill in the marks that you want this year. And then you put it up beside your bed. And you actually see those marks, not only in your mind, but before you go to bed every night, you see the marks that you want already on the report card long before you get the report card. Can you do that, Mark?
Yes.
You can do that?
Yep.
Mark, is there anything you want to say to everybody here?
Hello.
Hello? Mark, I want to thank you for being such a pro, okay? Mark, how about a little hug before you go? Okay. Thanks, Mark. Now you see, why can we not sit down with, say, kids in school and fill out the report card before the term begins? We do it in business. We do it in everything else. Why not set up an environment or an atmosphere of expectation? All right. Now, I'm going to ask you that before you leave here today, like at lunch, you take this book with you. You take some time today and you sit down with page 33 and you list in your personal life, in your family life, and in your business life, all the things that you really want. And then beside it, put down whether or not you have been expecting them. Now, why haven't we been expecting them? Because we allow the demand and we allow the risk to control whether or not we're going to do it. Don't allow others. Don't allow circumstance. Don't allow it to control the way you feel about you. You determine your mental ruling state. Now, would you switch back, please, to page 31? I want to finish this so we can stay on time here. Now, there is one line just below the first paragraph on page 31. What are you doing to increase your income? I could have said, what are you doing to increase your relationships? What are you doing to increase, we'll say, your well-being? What are you doing to increase your productivity? What are you doing to increase these things, to improve them? Well, if your answer to this question is nothing, or if you are just beginning to think seriously about what you could do, you have probably not yet grasped the ideas presented in the previous chapters. You should be aware that the chapters in this book resemble the individual pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. And each chapter is related one to the other in such a way that if we put them together, we can see the entire picture. The entire picture. I had an individual come up to me one day at a seminar and said, you know, Canary, he said, this is all well and good, and I'd like to go ahead and do it. But he said, you realize that by the time I reach this goal I want to set, he said, I'm 50 now. He said, and for me to reach this goal, I'd be 58. I said, well, how old will you be if you don't reach it? Come on, think about it now. I mean, the kind of thinking that we get involved in. Einstein said that all conditions and all circumstances in our lives, he said, they are a result of a certain level of thinking. Now, he said, if we want to change the conditions and the circumstance, we got to change the level of thinking that's responsible for it. We got to change the level of thinking that's responsible for it, which is our expectations must move to a new dimension. In this last paragraph, since you are now well into the heart of the book, I would ask you to pay particular close attention to the ideas which follow, so you can use them to successfully tie all the pieces together. You will soon discover that if the ideas in this chapter are applied with intelligence, that expectation can be a triggering mechanism which attracts into your life every good that you desire. Do you know, if you have something you desire today, which you do you know that puts you in touch with it? You're hooked up to it. You're in harmony with it right now, but it's your expectation that moves it into your life. We will always gravitate towards that which we most secretly love, be it base of beautiful or a mixture of both. For into your hand will be placed the exact result of your ideal, your vision. Into your hand will be placed the exact result of your vision and your ideal. So expectation is the triggering mechanism. However, if you do not exercise extreme caution, expectation can also turn just as rapidly into a destructive, lethal enemy. As people go around expecting bad things to happen to them. Oh, I don't want to do that. What if this happens? Therefore, you must be cognizant of how you are exercising this invisible but powerful force. We believe then that you already understand that you cannot have wealth in your material world until you first visualize the wealth in your mind. Have you ever considered that the highest, the most noble, and the most excellent thing about you is formless in nature? That the highest, the most excellent, the most noble thing about you is formless in nature. But what does this really mean? It means that before any one of us can ever begin to overcome the poverty which surrounds us in our external world, we must first conquer the impoverishment that is buried deep within ourselves. Impoverishment meaning many areas of our life. Some people are emotionally bankrupt. Emotionally. Now, what we're going to do is Bob is going to come up and take you through the rest of this chapter. And that will start on page 32. And this will show us exactly how this expectation releases or moves this energy into what is called form. And no one will do that better than Bob Proctor. Thank you.
Flip over to page 32. Now, rather than read that page, I want to suggest that you just listen and mentally go along with me. I'm going to attempt to paint a picture in your mind. I want you to image an elderly couple that are living in the backwoods. They've been there all their life. They know nothing except what's in their own immediate environment. Now, this elderly couple have never had an experience of using electricity. All they've ever illuminated their home with is a wax candle or a kerosene lamp. They've had travelers that drop by periodically that have talked about this idea of electricity, but they have never used it. In the latter years of their life, they're transported into a small town. And to their amazement, this house is lighted with little 8-candled bulbs. Now, keep in mind, all they've ever used is the is the wax candle or the kerosene lamps. Now, to their amazement, they have this electricity. It would truly be magic to them. Now, I want you to imagine if you've just, I don't know, maybe purchased a microwave oven that has a sensory touch. Just the energy coming from your finger will activate the switch, and it would cook a hot dog faster than you could pour a glass of milk. We stand and we look at those things even when we're using them when we're alone. And we laugh. We think, wow, you know. Meaning, it's not able to talk to us. It's not able to laugh with us. But we're amused by this concept. Well, this couple, I would imagine, would go over and they'd touch the switch. Remember, light to them was fire up to that point. And they're amazed that it doesn't burn them. They just flip the switch, the light's gone, it's dark again. I would imagine they'd look at this. Go, wow, isn't that something? Think of it. Gee. Well, try and experience this in your mind. They have never, ever seen anything like this before. They'd do it together, and then when they were alone, they'd wander over and they'd flip that switch again. See, their expectation would be that of fire, and every time they get near light, they expect it to be burned. But now they're finding that this doesn't burn them. It's much better to read by. If they had a book, they could sit and they'd read it so much easier with this new light than they would have with the old. Well, you know, electricity is very, very much like this power that we use in many respects. If you're going to work with electricity, you must work from a higher to a lower potential. Any engineer, any electrician will be quick to tell you that if you attempt to work from a lower to a higher potential, you'll get no use out of the electricity. Certainly no positive use. They'll also tell you that electricity can cook a person's dinner or it can cook the person. And the truth is, we have used it for both on occasion. You can use the electricity to freeze food, or you can use electricity to fry the food. It can be used one way or another. One day, after this elderly couple had become used to this new concept, and they can turn the light on without any fear of being burned, and they're used to these little 8-candle powered bulbs, a traveler knocks on their door. The traveler is holding a light bulb. And he's saying, those little bulbs are no good anymore. There's not enough light from them. The illumination, it's limited. What you really need is one of these 60-candle powered bulbs. Those little 8-candle powered bulbs are really next to useless. The elderly couple, of course, doesn't really know what the traveler's talking about. Why, he said, you know that one of these bulbs would illuminate this room to a greater degree than all of these bulbs put together. Said, let me show you. And he goes around and he loosens all the little bulbs but one. Then he takes the one remaining bulb that's burning and he takes it right out of the socket and he puts in the 60-candle powered bulb, and wham, to their amazement, that entire room is illuminated like daylight. They have difficulty believing that so much light could come from one bulb. Now I want you to imagine that traveler attempting to tell that elderly couple that the magic is not in the bulb, that the power had always been there. They'd say, oh, no way. The magic's in the bulb. You go back to the electrician or the engineer, and they'll tell you that the only limits placed on this power that we call electricity that is illuminating this stage, the only limits placed on it are the limits that's placed on the form through which it flows, namely the transformer or the bulb. Likewise, the only limit that's placed on this power are the limits that's placed on the form through which it flows. And if you want to illuminate your life to a greater degree, all that is necessary is for you to build a bigger idea, understand the laws of this power, impregnate this part of your personality with that bigger idea, and you will see your results change just as fast as the light in that room changed. I'm going to give you an excellent example. At the break, I had a gentleman come over and talk to me. He's sitting right over here on my left. And he showed me something. I read you a letter yesterday, or in an earlier lesson, where Joanne White from Kansas City told me about her son going to the seminar in 1976 and the change that took place. That letter was dated February 1986. There's this gentleman sitting on the side here. Do you want to stand up for a minute, please? He came to the seminar in February 1986. What were you earning prior to that, Al?
Approximately $18,000.
$18,000. I'm going to relate that to the little 8-candle powered bulb. Al, approximately what are you earning today per year?
Approximately $500.
$500,000. He didn't even mess around with the 60-candle power bulb. He shot right up to 100. Now, I referred to my son's manager yesterday. This man has the same manager. And I was mentioning that your environment is vitally important. See, not only is Brian fortunate enough to have the same manager, he's fortunate enough to have an associate like Al. There are 20,000 agents selling real estate in Al's company. Is that correct, Al?
That's within REMAX International.
There's 20,000.
Correct.
How many of the 20,000, Al, now think of the way I'm asking you the question, of 20,000, how many of them sell more in a year than you do?
About 13.
He stands number 14 out of 20,000 salespeople. Many of these people would be in the business for a number of years. Al's been in the business since February 1986. How many in Canada sell more than you, Al?
7.
Changes daily, I guess. When you handed this to me at the break, and that's when he gave it to me, what did you tell me made the difference?
Just changing my attitude and following some of the things that I've picked up through your seminars.
You came to a seminar shortly after you started.
Exactly.
And he took these ideas and look what he's done with them. Give him another hand. Thank you, Al. You know, I mentioned early in the book that reading and memorizing this information does absolutely no good. I've been in this business a long, long time. I've been in it just about as long as Brian's been living. And I have watched many people come in and go out of this business. Many of them could talk very intelligently about this, but only a few ever really learned how to use it. You've got to stick with this. And you have to take these lessons serious. They sound a little silly at times, but it's like the little young guy from Burlington that I mentioned, Tim Krochak. He said, although this stuff may sound hokey, it works. You see, Al went from an $18,000 idea to a $500,000 idea. This power doesn't recognize difference. It just takes whatever you give to it and turns it into form.
Okay. I thought I had a little bit more time there before it cut off, but expecting abundance. So we listened to John and Bob go through this lesson on expectation and expecting abundance. Some really good points there and some good stories that illustrate expectation and how we can use this in our lives and as we're going after our goals. So what we need to do as we close this off and when we're done here today, start to look at what you've been expecting. As John mentioned, you get back over to it. Something that he had said, which is a good question to ask ourselves and do some reflection, is ask, what are you doing to increase your income? What are you doing? What are you doing to increase your relationships? What are you doing to improve your health? What are you doing to fill in the blank? Ask yourself these, write it down. What am I doing to, and then really think about it. And you'll see what you are expecting based off of what you are doing. So we want to expect the good that we desire, as Bob had with the stick person and John. We have this desire up here. We need to impregnate it or impress it into the subconscious mind, plant that seed, and then expect that it will grow. When we do that by getting emotionally involved with the idea, we expect that it's going to come to us. And then based off of the feelings we have and the vibration that sets up, we just start to do the work, expecting it's going to happen. So what are we doing to increase the wealth? Right here, what are we doing? If we're thinking the thought, we've built the image and we've impressed it, then we just need to get on with the work. You know, at one point, Bob has a saying, and he might have, I believe he says it in here. I don't know if he's already said it or if he's going to say it in another lesson, but he said that it might be in one of the earlier pages. He has, and I think it was the Quakers. He says the Quakers have a saying, and it's pray and move your feet. And what is prayer? Prayer is when we build this image and we turn it over to spirit. We let go and we let God. So we form the prayer by building the image. That's the prayer. And then we get on with the work. We expect that it's going to happen and we get on with the work. So ask yourself those questions, really think about it, and think of the areas that you can improve what it is that you're doing. That'll show you what you've been expecting. Look at your results that you're currently getting in life, and that's going to show you what you've been expecting up until this point. So that's all the time we're going to take today on this. Tomorrow I will be going live earlier, so it won't be noon, because I am running a 7-day gratitude challenge. So I'm meeting with a group of people, going live for 7 days, and we're focusing just on developing the habit of daily gratitude. Because gratitude is the connecting piece. It's what connects us with our source of supply. It raises our vibration up. And as we're learning with these lessons, it's all about vibration and frequency. We want to get onto a higher frequency. And one of the best ways to do that is through gratitude. Because when we're grateful for the things that we have, then God gives us more things to be grateful for. And the thing is as we've been learning, we build these images and we have those 3 levels: spiritual, physical, and we have the intellect. That spiritual is a place, it is a thing, it's the non-physical, but it's every part as real as the physical. So we can be grateful for something that we have not yet manifested in our physical world. If we can see it in our mind, we can hold it in our hand. That's where that saying comes from. So we're going to be doing a whole week of gratitude. If you'd like to join us, I'll put the link in the comments below on here, and you can join us. But I'm be doing that at 11 a.m. Eastern, which will be 9 Mountain Time. So I will be going live after that. So probably around 10 o'clock tomorrow. So once again, I want to thank you for joining us today. If you're watching on the replay, put a comment in that #replay or something of that nature. And I will see you guys tomorrow. So once again, thanks for coming to the Daily Dose of Mind Stuff. My name is Ed Reiner. Have a great rest of the day. Peace. God bless.